Don't you just want to dance to that song? Whenever that comes on the radio, I'm just in my car going, I love it. Okay, so I'm so excited. I get to start off our new sermon series, and it's a series of sermon series. As you know, we have our vision statement, and we're going to be going into depth into each point of it. So we're going to do a whole sermon series based on each point that is in our statement, and that will just encompass like everything. So since we're starting it off today, I just wanted to go through the whole thing with you again. Just read it, and then I'm going to introduce the first point. So, our vision. We are a place where people from all walks of life can find love, acceptance, inspiration, guidance, purpose, joy, and fulfillment. We are a church that isn't a church, but a family where the experience of community, love, and God's grace abound. We are every person growing to spiritual maturity through studying God's word, prayer, making devotions, small groups, and taking on a ministry to care for the needs of and give to others. We are equipping every person for a significant ministry by helping them discover the gifts and talents that God gave them. We are building God-centered marriages and families that are the dwelling place of God and the cornerstone of a healthy society. And we are sharing with the people of the Denver area truth that has been hidden in the Bible until now, God's original purpose of creation, how humanity fell away from God, and our path to returning to God's ideal and dream. We own a beautiful and modern building that serves as the hub for all of our many family and faith-based activities going on throughout the week. And we are a community that embodies a legacy of living for the sake of others and building the kingdom of heaven here on earth that our founders, Reverend and Mrs. Moon, whom we call the true parents, have passed on to us. I love reading through it again. It just fills me up when I read it. So the first one, we are a place where people from all walks of life can find love, acceptance, inspiration, guidance, purpose, joy, and fulfillment. So today I'm going to be focusing in on the inspiration part of it. I know it's kind of down a little bit, but it just worked out that I was giving the service this week and I felt inspired to talk about inspiration, and Mike will talk about love and acceptance next week. So when we read this is what, we may not be already all of these things that we say we are in our vision statement, but this is the vision that, just like Mike talked last week, this is the vision that we are casting for ourselves, that we are growing into. And so when I read these, we want people, when they walk in the building, and all of us, even we who have been here for 40 years, that we can find love, acceptance, inspiration, guidance, purpose, joy, and fulfillment. This is the kind of environment that we want to create. So I'm going to be talking about inspiration, and my title is Inspiration, Its Purpose, and Its Pitfalls. So what is inspiration? I think probably we all have a little bit of our own definition of what that might be. But what is inspiration, and why is that something that we put into our vision statement? Why is it something we want people to experience? I have a couple of, I don't think I actually put these. Nope. Okay. I got these from definitions from various dictionaries. One definition of inspiration is the process of being mentally stimulated to do or feel something, and especially to do something creative. And the second definition I found is inspiration is a feeling of enthusiasm you get from someone or something that gives you new and creative ideas. So I'm sure you know the feeling. Maybe you attend the marriage retreat, or maybe you have a prayer, or maybe you get some kind of just new idea, new business idea, or a new idea of something to do with your kids. You get some new inspiration for your life, new understanding about your life, or you come up with an amazing idea. And then, that's all you can think about for a while. Do you know that feeling when it's just like, oh, this is amazing, and then you just keep, it's like it just builds and builds, and you keep thinking about it. It's a really awesome feeling, and we want people to have more of those experiences. So inspiration is great, and it's something that we are encouraging. However, I know what I've found is that people have a lot of different relationships with inspiration. Some of you might know the type of people who just want to live off of inspiration. They always are looking for inspiration. They might be the type of people who's always posting those memes on Facebook, those inspiring little words all the time. Or, I've met a lot of people who are like, well, I don't feel like it, so I'm not going to do it. They want to feel it. They want to feel the inspiration if they're going to do anything about it. Right? There's some people who are always looking for, it's almost like a drug, they're looking for that next experience that's going to lift them up and make them feel great, and they're going to be happy, and they're going to be excited about their life. And if for some reason that happens to wear off, they're just going to look for the next one. Right? Maybe some of you can relate with that type of person. I was telling Mike about my topic, and how that there's also the other type of people who kind of, they're jaded by inspiration, shall I say. And, Mike and I, after we graduated from high school, we both attended this several year mission program. At the time it was called Special Task Force. And every morning, we would read God's words, and then we would go out and we would fundraise, or we would talk to people, and we were really trying to live out our faith. And it was definitely a challenging environment to be in. And this is the environment where I really saw some people were always looking for the inspiration. They didn't want to go out unless they were super excited to go out. And then Mike was like, oh, I know those people, the people who, he said he knew people who said, oh, I don't want to get inspired. And I thought, for a second, I was like, wait, what? You don't want to get inspired? But if you also had the experience of getting inspired, and then after a while, a feeling wears off, and then you're left back where you were, then you can get kind of jaded by that, or it's almost, you feel like it's something false. Inspiration is something false, and I don't want that, because I just want to do it because I know I have to do it. So maybe you can relate with that type of person, I don't want to go up because then I have to go down. But it's true, feelings aren't permanent. Feelings and emotions never last. They're always shifting, and they're always changing. So that's why some people don't want to get inspired, because they have to deal with a letdown. So then, but if inspiration is a feeling, and it's not something permanent, and it's not something that lasts, then what is the value of inspiration? What is the value of inspiration, and why is it something that we have in our vision statement that we want people to experience if it's something that doesn't last? There is a purpose. There is a purpose for inspiration. That I believe we wouldn't experience feelings of inspiration if God didn't design us to do that, and if God didn't have a reason for us to experience inspiration. So this is my purpose that I've found for inspiration. Maybe you can define it your own way a little bit, but this is what I feel is the purpose of the feeling of inspiration. Inspiration provides a moment of clarity that calls us into action. I feel that it's to spur us into action. When we get an inspiration about something, it's not usually about something that we do every day. Like, we don't usually wake up and be like, oh my gosh, I'm so inspired, I'm gonna make toast for breakfast. Or, oh my gosh, I'm so excited, I'm gonna drive the same route to school that I always do. Inspiration is about something new, right? It's usually something that we've never thought of before, or we've never done before, and it's something totally out of our realm of experience that we're usually living in, right? So, in our normal everyday life, maybe some people are more in the habit of trying new things and going new places and talking to new people, but I think in our normal everyday life, we just don't think about those things too much. We kind of have a rhythm and a schedule and a method that we do things by, and it works for us, and so we just do them. But when would we try new things? When would we think to share our faith with somebody who's sitting next to us? When would we get inspired? When would we decide to start a new business in our normal everyday life that we're just doing and thinking the same things? So inspiration is this elevated feeling, elevated understanding that provides a moment of clarity or like a new perspective that then calls us into action. So the thing is, inspiration feels really good. I'm sure you can think of moments where you just feel like the sky opened up and everything was clear and you knew exactly why you're on this earth and you knew God loved you and you know that feeling. But the pitfall is that sometimes we focus too much on that feeling of inspiration and not enough on what the inspiration is calling us to do. So I have a story. This is a classic story. If you are not so familiar with it, I think you'll find it very interesting. I'm going to share a story from the Bible of John the Baptist. This is from the book of Matthew. I'm going to share a little bit from chapter 3, verses, it's at the end. And then I'm going to share a little bit from chapter 11. So in those days, John the Baptist came, preaching in the wilderness of Judea and saying, "Repent, for the kingdom of heaven has come near." This is he who was spoken of through the prophet Isaiah. A voice of one calling in the wilderness, "Prepare the way for the Lord and make straight paths for him." John's clothes were made of camel's hair, and he had a leather belt around his waist. His food was locusts and honey. People went out to him from Jerusalem and all Judea and the whole region of Jordan. Confessing their sins, they were baptized by him in the Jordan River. Then Jesus came from Galilee to Jordan to be baptized by John. But John tried to deter him, saying, "I need to be baptized by you, and do you come to me?" Jesus replied, "Let it be so now. It is proper for us to do this to fulfill all righteousness." And then John consented. As soon as Jesus was baptized, he went up out of the water. At that moment, heaven was opened, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and alighting upon him. And a voice from heaven said, "This is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased." And this is a rendition of the experience. And then I continued to read through Matthew, and then this is the point where Jesus began his ministry. This is where he took on the role of the Savior for humankind. So he began going into the towns. He traveled all over. He was doing miracles. He was helping blind people to see. He was raising people from the dead. He was also gathering his disciples. He was finding his disciples and gathering them. And this is also when he gave the Sermon on the Mount, and he spoke to thousands of people. So Jesus just he was exploded out of the gate with his mission, right? And then Matthew chapter 11 comes along. And this is what this says. After Jesus had finished instructing his 12 disciples, he went on from there to teach and preach in the towns of Galilee. When John, who was in prison, heard about the deeds of the Messiah, he sent his disciples to ask him, "Are you the one who is to come? Or should we expect someone else?" Jesus replied, "Go back and report to John what you hear and see. The blind receive sight, the lame walk, those who have leprosy are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news is proclaimed to the poor. Blessed is anyone who does not stumble on account of me." As John's disciples were leaving, then Jesus began to speak to the crowd about John. "What did you go out into the wilderness to see? A reed swayed by the wind? If not, what did you go out to see? A man dressed in fine clothes? No, those who wear fine clothes are in king's palaces. Then what did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and more than a prophet. This is the one whom it is written, 'I will send my messenger ahead of you, who will prepare your way before you.' Truly, I tell you, among those born of women, there has not risen anyone greater than John the Baptist. Yet, whoever is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he." Isn't that a fascinating story? You know, it was interesting. I hear a lot of these quotes from the Bible, you know, in different places and at different times. But it was so interesting to read it from the beginning to the end and see that when John baptized Jesus, that was the beginning of his ministry. And from there, he just did so many things. But there's not another mention of John until chapter 11, when he's in prison. And he's asking Jesus, are you really the one? So when John baptized Jesus, it was like that moment of inspiration, right? For him, he had a vision. The heavens opened up. It was like the Spirit descended upon Jesus like a dove, and he heard God's voice saying, "This is my Son, with whom I am well pleased." And before he even came, he knew Jesus was a great man. He said, you should be the one baptizing me. What am I doing baptizing you? But then Jesus starts doing these things, like raising people from the dead and healing people and talking to thousands of people. And I don't know. I'm not John the Baptist. I don't know what he felt. Maybe he thought, maybe this is a little too much. Maybe this is a little bit crazy. Maybe he's a crazy man. Or maybe he felt like he would be getting in over his head if he were to join in with him. Or maybe there would be some repercussions for doing such drastic things at that time. And maybe he was just a little bit jealous, because up until that point, he was the holy man, and people came from all over Jordan to come and get his advice and be baptized by him. But whatever the reason, there's not another mention of John all throughout that time of Jesus' ministry until he was in prison and eventually executed. So John didn't have a single thing to do with Jesus' work, with what Jesus came to do. And then, when he was absolutely in confusion and doubt, and in prison, he directly questioned Jesus' role, which he himself had understood and proclaimed before. So this is the pitfall of inspiration. This is an example of what we don't want to do with our inspiration, right? And I'm sure that John the Baptist isn't the only one. I mean, I have experiences like that in my own life. I'm sure you have as well, where you had an idea, or you understood something clearly, and you thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing, and I'll wait till next week to do it. Or maybe next week isn't so good, actually. There's soccer practice, so maybe next month. And then nothing ever happens. I mean, I actually had this flashback to this time. When I was in middle school, I was really, really, really into crafts. So, and I would do candle making for a month, and then I'd be bead making, and then I'd make a belt with the beads, and then I would do clay, and it was just like I was all into crafts. And I remember we were on a road trip to visit our relatives one summer, and we were staying in a hotel room. I remember this specifically. And before I went to sleep, I got this idea on how to make like this amazing candle holder. For tea lights, it's like a round candle holder, and I was going to make clay designs. It's called millefiori, where you like make a design in a log and you roll it, and then the design becomes really thin, and then you cut it in little pieces. And I was going to stick those little pieces all over the glass candle holder, and then the light would shine through it, and it would be beautiful. And I really couldn't fall asleep, probably for 4 or 5 hours at night. I was so excited about this idea that I had come up with. But, I didn't tell anybody about it. And then we went on our vacation, and then we came home, and I didn't have the right kind of clay that I needed, and it never manifested. But I was surprised that I still remembered it so clearly. Actually, and then I've had multiple experiences of this, and probably if you have ever been to summer camps or retreats where you get a lot of guidance, and you have times in the day where you pray, and you get so inspired, and you're like, oh my gosh, I love God. I love my brothers and sisters. I'm like, how could I ever do anything wrong ever again? Like, I just feel so alive and lit up with life and love. And, maybe, I don't know, maybe you haven't had that kind of experience, but but I feel like it's fairly common, especially if you go to, Bible camps or summer camps, or you go to a retreat where you're just filled, you're just poured into, right? But how many of you had the experience where then you go home, and then school starts, and then you just feel like the same old person that you were before you went? So what was even the purpose of going? So that is a pitfall of inspiration, when we focus more on the feeling that we get from our idea or from our revelation than what we are called to do with it. But here's the beauty of inspiration, okay? If we immediately take some action in the direction that our inspiration is calling us to, then it has the power to change our course and send us in a new direction. Actually, I believe most of you are here because you had some kind of an experience like that, where you had a new understanding about life. You had a new understanding about God. And in that moment, you did something different. Maybe you decided to join up with a group of missionaries. Maybe you decided to put off school for a while you focus on learning about God. I don't know what brought you here, but I'm sure that you have all had that experience where you took an action on your inspiration, and you are now in a different place than you would have been if you hadn't taken that action. I have a couple of examples that I can remember. Actually, it's really cool. I'm going to be driving back to my parents' home on Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm going to be training for my race with my sister. And every time I drive down this little windy country road that goes between my parents' house and town, I see this sign on the side of the road, and it's a trash pickup sign, and it says Woodland High School Beta Club. And I think, I did that. Because back in 2006, maybe? No. 2002. Wow. I went to this summer program called Service for Peace. And we got kids together from all over the country. We got together in DC for an entire month, and we did over 100 service hours, each one of us. And we really believe that by serving people and filling people's basic needs, that there would be a bond and a connection that would go over any racial barriers or religious barriers or cultural barriers, and that peace can actually be created through service. And so I was there for a month, and I was totally submerged in this environment, right? And I got really inspired about it. And so this is a good example where I actually took action. When the month finished, school started almost right away. The first week of school, I went to my school counselor and I said, I want to do some kind of service thing. We got to do some service for peace. Service, we got to do something. And actually, my counselor kind of looked at me. I went to a small school, and we had a number of troubled people. We had one counselor for kindergarten through 12th grade, and she basically looked at me and said, my job is to help people who have been expelled to get back into school, and I can't really think about this right now. And I was like, oh no, what? But I wasn't deterred, because I was also part of what was called the Beta Club, which is kind of like an honors club in school. And I said, okay, this is the group of people who's supposed to be the model for the class, right? It's supposed to be the model for the school. And all we're really doing is doing fundraisers and making money so we can go on trips and do cool things. So let's do something service. And fortunately, one of our teacher sponsors caught the idea, and she helped me. And we established this trash cleanup on the side of the road, and also there was a small little food pantry in our town where senior citizens and people who can't afford enough can come on, once every other week and pick up boxes of food. But there's just a couple volunteers who are spending hours packing these boxes of food. So we organized it so that every other week we would send a couple people. They would even get time out from school to go to the food pantry and help load boxes so that we could give them out on the second Saturday of the month. And I honestly didn't expect it to continue after I left, but I drive home and that sign is still there. And I have a friend who works closely with the food bank, and she's like, yeah, those Beta Club kids, they still come to the food pantry. And that was 15 years ago. So it's so awesome to me to think that there are still people who are benefiting from one action that I took out of inspiration 15 years ago. Another example is actually just the marriage retreat that just happened. As Mike mentioned, we attended it ourselves back in November, and we really had a wonderful experience. And I also wanted, maybe Linda had some inspiration to send us, but your inspiration and your action resulted in a lot of things. So, we were there and we had such a wonderful experience, but we could also see that the staff of the retreat was kind of stretched thin. And we felt like, how can they keep this up? Do they have the funding? Do they have the people to work with? Can they keep this going? So in a kind of moment of inspiration, Mike and I said we should talk to them and see if there's anything we could do. So we contacted them. It's like, you're busy, but can we have a meal with you guys and talk with you? And we did, and that was when the idea was born that, well, maybe we could partner with a local community and host Energize Retreat with less expense on the part of like the Blessed Family Ministry, but with still a great benefit for the community. And it's so awesome that last weekend it happened, But I will say I wasn't always inspired about it. We had that moment of inspiration, and we talked about it, and we took that action of like putting ourselves out there. But I will say there was a lot of times when I wasn't so inspired and excited about it. The inspiration does wear off. There are times when I felt like, I was researching places to do it, and I must have researched over 50 different locations to have this marriage retreat at. And they were almost all booked up, And I'm like, man, is this ever going to happen? Is this worth it? And then all the different calls that we had to have, and sometimes there was miscommunications, and it would be frustrating. But the thing is, we had taken that action and made a commitment. We put ourselves on a path to do something new. And even though the inspiration didn't last the whole time, we already had momentum because of the action that we took. And that actually brings me to something that I feel is kind of the fruit of inspiration, is the fulfillment you get when you act on it and carry it through. And I think we'll talk more about that in another topic, because fulfillment is in our vision statement as well. But it's incredibly fulfilling to see, like when I drive home and I see the road clean and I see that sign, and when I talk to the couples who have been at the retreat and I say, how was your experience? And they say, it was amazing. Then that feeling is actually better than the initial feeling of inspiration that I had in the beginning. I just have one more example, and I feel like this is one of the best examples. Many of you know Reverend Moon, who we refer to as our true father. The story is that when he was about 16 years old, and he was praying on the mountain, he was looking for guidance in his life. His family is going through difficulties. His country was occupied by Japan. His country is going through difficulties. So he's praying to God for understanding. And he prayed all through the night, and then on Easter morning, he met Jesus in his prayer. And Jesus said, this is why God can't interfere. This is why the world is the way it is. Actually, God's heart is sorrowful. God isn't some man in a white beard and a crown and a staff sitting on a throne up in heaven. God is in our hearts, and God is suffering with each and every one of us. Jesus wanted to bring everybody back to God. I wanted to relieve God's sorrow. But I was crucified too early, and I want you to take that up. I want you to be that person. Now, I don't know if I'd call that a moment of inspiration. I think that would actually be a sobering moment, but it was definitely a moment of clarity when all these questions that Reverend Moon had been asking in his life, like the answers were all laid out on the table. And then there was a calling to do something new. And from that point, it could go either way. He could be like John the Baptist and be like, wow, this is God's heart, and that's so amazing. And then just kind of see how the world plays out. But he didn't. From that day, even as a 16-year-old, he didn't know how he could save people. He didn't know how he was going to comfort God's heart. But he knew he had to try. So from that day, he delved into prayer. He prayed 6, 12, 18 hours a day. He served his family, he served his community, and he really sought for ways that he could be the kind of person that God could trust. And that has led all of us to where we are today. So it's interesting what inspiration can do. But the point is that the purpose of, where'd it go? Anyway, the purpose of inspiration is that it calls us to action. And that with that action, we go in a new direction, which gives us a new result and also gives us true fulfillment. Because when there's, with some action, even if it's just one thing, maybe you get inspired about something today in service. Maybe you get inspired about something before you go to sleep tonight. But if you take one action, just do it, like right now, take one action, then there's some give and take, right? There's a relationship there that's not just in your head, but it's in this world, it's in reality, it's in front of you. And with action, then there's a relationship, and there's energy, and there's momentum that starts to build. And then if you're already headed in a certain direction with some momentum, then even if, or shall I say even when the inspiration wears off, because it does, then there's something already happening. You're already invested. And then you can start to feel the real fruits of your investment. You can start to feel real fulfillment. So I will say there are some inspirations that we shouldn't act on. I just want to mention these briefly because sometimes we get inspired about, wow, there's a really beautiful dress there, and the manager isn't looking, and if I take it, nobody will ever notice. There's an opportunity. Like, not that kind of inspiration, okay? And also watch out for sexual inspiration, okay? Sometimes we get some sexual inspiration of some opportunity that comes up to us. But if it's not with your husband or wife, I'm not talking about that kind of inspiration either, okay? I'm talking about inspiration that is calling us towards our purpose, okay? But what I really love to see is action, okay? So when I think about our individuals and our families in this community, and when I see people taking an action, even if it's a new action, even if it's something they've never done before, and even if they're uncomfortable with it, I get so excited because I know that opens up a whole new realm of possibilities, a whole new realm of results that person and that this community hasn't experienced before. So that is why the word inspiration is in our vision, and we want you to experience it. We want you to experience that uplift, and then we want you to take some action. So I'm going to finish with that today. Please join me in prayer. Most beloved Heavenly Parent, good morning. Thank you for another beautiful day. Thank you for our lives. Heavenly Parent, we're so grateful that we can come together as brothers and sisters, as a family, as your children. Heavenly Parent, each one of us here is so incredibly precious to you. There is nobody else on this planet who could replace even one of us in your heart, because each one of us reflects something unique and brilliant and beautiful in your soul, in yourself. Heavenly Parent, I pray that in those moments when we have a clear understanding of who we are, and we have a clear understanding of our life and of our purpose, that we won't reject it, that we won't get jaded by happy feelings. And that we won't just look for that feeling either, but when we have those moments, that we can then take an action in the direction that you are calling us to, Heavenly Parent. And we know that that is how we grow. There are challenges, there are difficulties, and that's okay. That is how we grow. And when we look back to where we've come from, then we're only left with gratitude for your love, sometimes your tough love. We're only left with gratitude for our life. And we only want to offer our fruits and our fulfillment to you, Heavenly Parent. Please be with each one of us this week as we go out. Please guide our steps. I pray we can be open to your guidance, open to your inspirations, and then we can find you more and more every day. And I offer this prayer in my name, Michael and Adonia Hendrick of a Blessed Central Family. Amen and adieu. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a really great message. I took a lot out of it for myself. When we were first starting to come up with the idea of doing a sermon series based off of the first sentence of our vision statement, I thought, how could we possibly make like 6 sermons off of one sentence? But it's really amazing how much there is, even just to talk about inspiration, how much there is just to talk about fulfillment, and the idea of how can we actually come together as a community to experience those things? How can we really be clear that when somebody new comes to our community, that this is the vision that we have for this person's life? So I'm really grateful. Thank you. We're going to go through some of our announcements real quick. So first of all, I just want to share a few pictures from our Energized Marriage Retreat from last weekend. We had about 10 or 11 couples from our community come. We had couples come from Iowa and New Mexico and Texas because we don't do these very often. And members, staff from our headquarters in New York flew out to put this on. And I just heard so many great things about it. So I'm really grateful for people in our community that could go and just be able to benefit and grow their relationship with their husband, their wife. It's really awesome. I think we went to one in November. Also a lot of healing can take place too, which is really, really beautiful. Here, also some wonderful people that you may recognize. And a nice group photo. It was really beautiful, just a beautiful area in the mountains up near Granby, and that was really part of the experience, was just to be in the mountains and working on your marriage. It doesn't get much better than that. All right, so we are beginning a new sermon series this week. So of course, Pastor Adonia is going to be introducing that in a few minutes, but it's going to be called A Home for All. And this will be a 6-week sermon series, and this is really all about the first sentence on our vision statement. And I'll be sharing about that, but I think it's going to be really great. Hope you all can really enjoy it. Look forward to it. So we're changing this up a little bit. I realized that because I gave the presentation last week, and we had a couple people who came, and they loved it so much. And they were just passing through. They were just visiting on their way to, I think, Iowa. And they sat there, a nice young couple. They listened to the presentation and they loved it. So I realized that maybe if I give the presentation every week, not every week, maybe not somebody will come, but I just want to make the opportunity available because I think it's really valuable to be reminded about what we're trying to accomplish as a community and what's our vision, what we're trying to do. So it's really awesome. So scratch that. It's not going to be at 12:15. We're just going to do it right after service. So you can grab your lunch, join us in the French ministry room, and I'll do the presentation. It just takes about 20 minutes. So all are welcome, and that's just right next to the cafe over here. Every Thursday, Dr. Hendrick is doing a Bible study. So you can come and study together about the Bible at 7 p.m. He's got a whole layout of different topics and different books and verses in the Bible that he'll be going into and we can discuss together. So I think this is going to be a really powerful ministry in our church going forward. So if you're at all interested or just want to check it out, you can ask Dr. Hendrick. This will be at 7 p.m. every Thursday right here in the cafe. And then lastly, we want to thank the Hendricks seniors for cooking and cleaning next week. And also thank you to the Martinez family for cooking this morning, and also for the Loves for cleaning this morning. Thank you so much. It's what makes the world go round.